So the Las Vegas Raiders had an absolute massive game here against the Cleveland Browns, and today we're going to talk about this game. Because the Raiders had so many great moments out there, and this is probably the game that I think a lot of us felt like, hey, if you can't beat the Cleveland Browns, your season's essentially over. And the Raiders came in, and not only did they beat the Cleveland Browns, but they actually showed improvement, in my opinion, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some of the improvement that the Raiders showed ultimately, especially across the offensive line. But before we talk about that, Gardner Minshew is a guy that I think we need to talk about first and foremost, because Gardner Minshew had some big misses yesterday for the Raiders. And it wasn't terrible across the board, to be honest. I think Gardner Minshew had a pretty damn good game, but he did have some misses. And to me, for the Raiders to get to a point where, weeks 1, 2, and 3, we really weren't that good on the offensive side, right? We had so many struggles for probably 10 of the first 12 quarters of the season, in the first 3 games specifically. We had so many struggles on the offensive side. And the thing is coming into this 4th game against the Browns, I felt like we actually showed improvement on the offensive side. I felt like the offense actually got a lot better coming into this game. But more than that, I felt like if the Raiders are able to do a couple more things to improve just a little bit more as they go into next week, we might actually have an offense that's competent that could potentially win us some games. So Gardner Minshew did have a couple of misses, and these are things that he's going to have to clean up. He had one play, I think this was the 3rd play of the game. He had DJ Turner wide the hell open, and he missed him. Now, this play is interesting because from a defensive side, you can see this. The defense looks to be in a cover 3, and you can see a safety is going to rotate down, and you can see the middle of the field kind of open up. At the same time, a linebacker is going to try to run with DJ Turner, and no linebacker in the NFL is running with DJ Turner. And this guy was open, and if Gardner Minshew was able to hit DJ Turner on that, you're looking at 50 yards, maybe even a touchdown potentially on that play. And if the Raiders scored, essentially at that point it's like a 90-yard touchdown. If the Raiders scored a touchdown on that play, that would have flipped the entire game early on. And the Raiders were not obviously able to score, but, they weren't able to complete the pass. And I think to me that's the big thing that the Raiders are going to have to work on as we go forward. If Devontae Adams is not available to take 25% of all the targets, you got to be on the same page with your other wide receivers. You got to be able to hit them. Gardner Minshew also missed Jacoby Myers on the left sideline wide open. Jacoby Myers just put a really, really nice move on the cornerback straight up right at the point of attack, just created separation. Wide open. You got to be able to hit that one if you're Gardner Minshew. Those are the 2 plays that I think were absolutely terrible. That's probably like 100 yards right there. Maybe not 100, maybe 80 yards, right? But the Raiders essentially left 80 yards on the field on those 2 passes. Specifically, Gardner Minshew left those yards out there essentially. After criticizing him, let's also talk a little bit about some of the positive things he did. There was a play in which, this was also on the first drive of the game. I think this was actually the first play of the game. Gardner Minshew looks to his left and doesn't like what he sees, and the pocket's collapsing around him. He doesn't panic, and he rolls towards his right. And he gets out of there, and Brock Bowers is wide open, and he throws it, hits Brock Bowers right in the hands. We probably pick up 30 to 40 yards on this play, depending on if Brock Bowers makes a couple people miss, which he can definitely do. That was a really, really nicely created play by Gardner Minshew. The design of the play was not great, all right? It looks like the guys that ultimately started running those routes, it didn't look like they were really open. And Minshew did a good job not forcing the ball in there. And he also does a good job being able to run away from the pressure. So to me, that's a really, really good play. And I know not all of these plays are going to lead to the Raiders having a essentially a positive play, but these are the type of plays that I think allowed the Raiders to win games, right? These are going to be the plays that down the line, it could be the difference. It could be like 3rd and 8, and guys aren't open because the designs, maybe, you drop 7, 8 guys in the coverage. Guys aren't open. You make a play, and then a guy breaks open late, right? It happens all the time in the NFL. There was another play that Gardner Minshew had. Phenomenal play. The defense is going to end up bringing a blitz, and they go into like a cover 0 look. They brought like 7 guys. And he ends up hitting Jacoby Myers perfectly, and Jacoby Myers takes it. I think this play hit for about 20 yards. Just a really, really good job by Gardner Minshew to be able to see the blitz and get the ball out. Now, this looks like a run-pass option, but I'm not 100% sure it actually is. I think it was actually a passing play specifically, but I think the broadcast guy pointed it out that this was a run-pass option. I don't think it actually was based off the offensive lineman. But regardless of if it was or if it wasn't, it was still a really, really good job by Minshew to be able to get the ball out. That too, you got to avoid the guy that's trying to like knock down the pass. So you got to kind of find the throwing lane and be able to kind of fit the ball in there. And of course, Gardner Minshew does a good job on that one. And then you had this other play as well where it was third down. The Raiders needed to pick the first down up. We needed to continue to, essentially keep the chains going. And Gardner Minshew ends up hitting Trey Tucker towards the left sideline. Just a really, really nice pass, third down. You keep the chains going, and we score a touchdown on this drive, right? So third downs are key in my opinion, and Gardner Minshew did a really, really good job at certain moments of this game. Now, it wasn't all perfect. But we didn't convert enough third downs in my opinion. But I also think early on in the game, we really struggled to run the ball. I think in the first quarter and a half, we had like 10 yards rushing, right? We tried running the ball a solid amount of times. It was really in like the second part of the second quarter and then the third quarter, right? It was really like a quarter and a half where we had most of our success. But Alexander Mattson deserves a lot of credit. He had a 24-yard run, just a really, really nice job by the offensive lineman. Dylan Parham does a great job. Andre James as well as Jackson Powers-Johnson do a great job. And Alexander Mattson just read it perfectly. And these are the type of plays. This is why Alexander Mattson should be the Raiders' featured running back. Now, I will say this, I think all of us do prefer Alexander Mattson to be in the game. Alexander Mattson hasn't shown us in the past that if he's the starting running back and he's getting 20 carries a game, that he can actually be a good running back. Like, he's never shown that. In fact, Alexander Mattison's had all of his success mostly being the RB2, right? When Alexander Mattson was RB2 to Cook, right, Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattson was an absolute great running back. But then the second he was tasked to essentially be the starter, the guy had fumbling issues. The guy was averaging like 3 yards per attempt. And right now, he's technically RB2 behind Zamir White, and he's having success. So I know a lot of Raider fans are saying, hey, let's just go full-time to Alexander Mattson. Although I do lean that way, I'm not 100% sure if he becomes the full-time starter that he'll have success, just because he hasn't actually shown it, right? So I am a little hesitant with going forward with Mattson. But Mattson obviously looks a lot better than Zamir White, especially in this scheme and system. And I think Jackson Powers-Johnson, Dylan Parham, Andre James, right? I think those three guys in the middle are probably good enough, especially at this point, that you should be able to have success, especially on the zone run. So we'll see what ends up happening coming up against the Denver Broncos. If the Raiders do actually go with Alexander Mattson, I'm excited to see how that kind of translate into the success for the Raiders on the offensive side, right? The run game yesterday, in my opinion, was the difference for the Raiders to have success versus not having success, which we didn't have success in the first 3 games. And the offense just looked better yesterday. Even though Gardner Minshew technically had statistically his worst game, I felt like the offense flowed a lot better. I felt like things just looked cleaner, and Gardner Minshew looked more comfortable, I would say, as well, although he was pressured a lot, and I think our offense line has to continue to get better. But I do think we will continue to get better, and I do hope that the steps we showed against the Cleveland Browns will be able to go into Week 5 against the Broncos and kind of show that same improvement and just continue to get better. To me, was the biggest takeaway from this game against the Browns. And that is that Jackson Powers-Johnson is an absolute monster. Jackson Powers-Johnson is a maniac out there. I mean, I saw plays where this guy was hitting Myles Garrett. Literally, on the first play of the game, he was going right after Myles Garrett. He was hitting him. Kolton Miller was engaged with him. He was going right at him. There were plays where this guy was pancaking people. There were plays where this guy was just an absolute monster out there. Jackson Powers-Johnson, to me, is such a great pickup, and you can pretty much see it right away. If you guys follow my content on the Football Scout channel, one of the things I always say with offensive linemen is you can see guys that are good right away. You can project guys coming out of college, right? You can look at their tape, and if it's dominant in college, chances are it'll probably translate into the NFL. And with Jackson Powers-Johnson, he was an absolute superstar in college. My number 1 overall offensive lineman coming out last year. And you can see why this guy was such a, regarded as such a highly recognized center, right? Coming out, he was probably one of the best centers we had seen since Creed Humphrey. And you can see it right on tape why Jackson Powers-Johnson is an absolute superstar. The guy was, in my opinion, the reason why the Raiders had so much success running the football yesterday. Alexander Mattson had a great game for the Raiders. Zamir White had some big runs as well, right? He popped a couple as well. I know overall wasn't great, but he had probably like 3 or 4 really, really nice runs. And Jackson Powers-Johnson was one of the reasons why the Raiders had so much success. And at this point, there's no way Jackson Powers-Johnson will not be the full-time starter going forward, right? I think at this point, Jackson Powers-Johnson is going to play every snap that he's healthy for the Raiders going forward. And the guy's just an absolute superstar, and I'm so glad that Tom Telesco took him in the second round, because that caliber of player doesn't come out every year. In fact, in this next class, very, very weak offensive line class, generally speaking, there's probably no first-round tackles, to be honest. There's maybe one guy that could be a first round offensive lineman, generally speaking, is probably like a guard, to be honest. And generally speaking, most teams aren't taking guards. But for the Raiders, we needed to revamp this offensive line. And even DJ Glaze looked pretty solid. And we're not going to get into Glaze in this video. Tomorrow, I'll probably do a separate film breakdown talking about DJ Glaze. We'll just kind of go over every single one of his snaps. But I'm happy that the Raiders brought in Jackson Powers-Johnson because the guy's a superstar. Another guy that deserves a little bit of credit is going to be Dylan Parham. Parham was a guy that came into this year, and I was really on the fence with him. I wasn't 100% sure if Dylan Parham's the Raiders' long-term guard or center, depending on where the Raiders thought he would ultimately play. And he's came in this season, he's been very solid. All right, when you watch Dylan Parham's tape, the one thing you'll notice is the guy's a very, very good run blocker. The guy does a really good job in so many different aspects. He does a great job reach blocking. He does a great job in power concepts. He's just a really, really solid overall offensive lineman. Now, Dylan Parham's not the strongest guy. He's not the quickest guy. And he'll have losing snaps for sure. He'll definitely get bull rushed, especially in pass pro. But Dylan Parham's a pretty solid football player, and I think for the Las Vegas Raiders, he makes a ton of sense to start for the rest of the season at right guard. Now, we did hear he got hurt yesterday. Cody Whitehair came in at some point towards like the fourth quarter. But if Dylan Parham's healthy, Jackson Powers-Johnson's healthy, those should be your two starting guards. And I think the Raiders' offense line from this point, it's only going to get better and better and better. Kolton Miller struggled a lot yesterday. And, I got a comment on my video that, Sanjit, you hyped up Myles Garrett, and he really didn't do all that much. The thing is Myles Garrett absolutely impacted this game for the Raiders. Myles Garrett, keep in mind, he didn't play full time. He played like 50% of snaps. The guy came in and had so many winning snaps against Kolton Miller. And Kolton Miller's been struggling, and we've all kind of known this, but it's gotten really, really bad. And yesterday, the guy had probably like 7 or 8 losing snaps in which the quarterback took hits because Kolton Miller was not able to anchor down on that side. Now, I'm not sure if we should only blame Kolton Miller for this, or if we should be helping Miller a little bit more than where we ultimately are helping him. And I understand Kolton Miller, year 5 or 6, the guy's been around for years. He shouldn't be the guy getting help, especially when you have a rookie at right tackle. But Kolton Miller is also coming into a season in which he basically rehabbed this entire offseason. And although he's been struggling, my hope is that this guy can potentially continue to get healthier and continue to get better as the season goes on, and then hopefully he'll bounce back next year for the Raiders. Let's switch focus. Let's talk a little bit about the defensive side. The defensive side, I would say, won the Raiders this game, right? I would even make the argument the offense actually lost us this game at the end of the game. The Raiders had an opportunity to put the game away, and our offense was not able to do that. To me, as an offense, you have to be able to help the defense. You have to be able to, at the end of the game, 5-6 minutes left, run the clock out. There's been so many games that I could count on the top of my head in like the last 2 years where the Raiders needed to get a stop and we weren't able to get a stop, right? We need key moments. Get a stop, potentially get the ball back for the offense. The Chargers game is a great example of that in week 1, right? The Raiders brought it down to 1 possession. We couldn't get a stop on the defensive side. And the Chargers went right downfield and scored a touchdown. The Raiders offense has to do that as well at some point. And hopefully, as it's continuing to improve, they'll be able to do that as we kind of go forward. But the defense helped win this game, and there are a couple of players that really, really showed up. Tyree Wilson's a guy that's getting a ton of credit. PFF has like a super high rank grade on him. People are talking about how this guy's had like a crazy game for the Raiders. I want to bring that back down a little bit. Tyree Wilson was not that good in my opinion. He did have a couple of plays he made, but we have to realize, if you play 40, 50 snaps, making 3 or 4 plays doesn't count as having a great game. Yes, he was able to beat the Cleveland Browns tackles, but to be honest, both of those tackles were not that good. In fact, Charles Snowden, Clavon Chasen also had a ton of success. All right, Charles Snowden balled out yesterday. Chasen made multiple plays as well yesterday. And I think those 2 guys, as well as Tyree Wilson, I think those 3 defensive ends having success against the Browns came more because of the fact that those tackles on the Browns weren't that good. Now, Tyree Wilson did make plays, and I will give him credit. Technically, he had 10 positive plays according to PFF. And those are according to PFF's like super advanced stats, right? Like PFF Ultimate, for example. They say he had 10 positive plays. And I watched all 10 of those plays. I'd say like 3 of them really impacted the play. The other 6 or 7 were like high effort plays. Maybe the quarterback didn't get the ball out and then Tyree Wilson kind of got home. There was one play where I think Tyree Wilson might have face masked the quarterback, but it wasn't actually called. Watson picked up like 3 or 4 yards on that play. But Tyree Wilson does look better for sure, right? There's no argument about that. Charles Snowden had a really, really good game. Clavon Chasen looked really good as well from the Raiders. Snowden had, I think, 8 positive plays according to PFF, and then Chasen had 5. And when I say positive according to PFF, they're actually it's a stat they measure. It's called impact plays. So they're plays where he essentially impacted the play. It's not always 100% correct, but a lot of the times it is fairly correct. The Raiders defensive ends had a really good game, but the guys that really impacted this game for the Raiders is going to be our 2 defensive tackles, the starting guys, the guys that I think have been pretty dominant the entire year. Christian Wilkins, Adam Butler, absolutely phenomenal, man. I don't even know how else to say this, but Christian Wilkins is an absolute superstar. As is Adam Butler, man. I think Adam Butler's impact could be bigger than Christian Wilkins. I think there's a realistic chance. And obviously, I do understand, right? Christian Wilkins is getting the double teams. He's getting the slides, which does open things up for Adam Butler. But Adam Butler's actually taking advantage of those things as well. There were so many plays on tape where Adam Butler just straight up beat his guy super quickly, right? Swipe one way, swipe the other way, spin, or whatever it is, and just instantly generate pressure on the quarterback. That's the type of player Adam Butler is, and I'm so happy that the Raiders actually brought this guy back, because for some reason I thought the Raiders would have let this guy go and become a free agent. Now, I wish the Raiders had signed this guy to like a 3-year contract, but I'm sure Butler wants to kind of bet on himself a little bit to potentially get like a $7-8 million contract at some point. But the Raiders should make it a point of emphasis to bring back Adam Butler as we go forward. The guy's a very, very good pass rusher, and he's good against the run as well, right? It's not like he's just a pass rusher. I think Adam Butler's taking his game to the next level, and I think Christian Wilkins probably has a lot to do with it as well, because, as Adam Butler, plays 40, 50 snaps next to Christian Wilkins, he can go back and watch tape, right? And Adam Butler played for the New England Patriots. This guy's not a stupid person. This guy's super smart, right? Adam Butler watches tape, and he can go and watch Christian Wilkins and see what Wilkins is doing against the run, against the pass, and how it's allowing him to have success. And Butler can kind of copy those things. So we got to give credit to Christian Wilkins as well for kind of coming in here and helping some of the other guys thrive as well. But both Adam Butler, Christian Wilkins, phenomenal game against the Browns. We needed those guys to step up, and they stepped up. Even the guys on the back end had a really, really good day. Trayvon Merrick had an interception. Corian Bennett had a couple of pass breakups. Jack Jones, although he wasn't perfect, Jack Jones did a really, really good job being in coverage and not being tested. Believe it or not, and I know some Raider fans don't believe this, when Jack Jones is on the defensive scouting report, right, for an opposing team, right, the Panthers, for the Browns or the Broncos, when those guys have the defensive scouting report and they're going through it and they're, okay, what guy's doing what, Jack Jones is listed right at the top. For every quarterback, they're going to say Jack Jones is going to bait you. So you need to be careful with Jack Jones, right? He's one of those guys that'll bait you into an interception. And I know he hasn't gotten an interception this year, but it's because teams have recognized and they're not testing him as much, right? Unless you're designing a concept where you're putting him in conflict, maybe it's some sort of levels concept, right? Or maybe you're running some sort of concept to the right. Maybe it's a scissors concept, maybe it's a high-low read, whatever it is. Unless you're running something specific to Jack Jones' side, quarterbacks are very careful throwing the ball to his side, right? Because Jack Jones will bait you. So I know some people are going to say he's overrated or whatever, but Jack Jones is pretty solid as well. But the guy that really flashed to me was Isaiah Pola-Mao. And we got to give Isaiah Pola-Mao so much credit for yesterday's game. I mean, this guy was an absolute star out there. 1st and 15, he got a sack, and that basically ended that entire drive. Even though you had a 2nd and 3rd down play, the fact that Isaiah Pola-Mao got a sack on 1st and 15, I mean, you're looking at a 2nd and 25. Like, what type of play calls do you have for 2nd and 25? Right? It's just not realistic. And because of the fact that Isaiah Pola-Mao blitzed off the slot corner position, he got to the quarterback. He actually wasn't even the slot corner. Technically, he was a safety, and he just kind of came down in the box, slowly made his way up, and he came off the edge, and he ended up getting to the quarterback. More than that, he had a couple of nice plays, right? There was a play 3rd and 4. Nate Hobbs was in coverage. The quarterback puts it up, and Jerry Jeudy would have probably caught it, and they would have picked the 1st down up, and they would have continued the drive. But here comes Isaiah Pola-Mao. He straight up smacks Jerry Jeudy, and he breaks the pass up, right? It was just a really, really good play by Isaiah Pola-Mao. And he didn't take a hit on Jerry Jeudy. I think he was trying to actually catch the football. Unlike this other play against Amari Cooper, Trayvon Merrick picks it off, but look at the hit by Isaiah Pola-Mao. That is nasty, man. That right there is tone setting. Like, the Raiders, I feel like in the first couple of games, the Raiders coming into the season had this identity that, hey, we want to be a tough physical football team. In the first 3 weeks, they did not show that. In week 3 against the Panthers, they got ran over. In fact, they didn't show that they're a physical team. Instead, they got bullied. But against the Browns, they showed that they're a physical team. And those guys like Isaiah Pola-Mao hitting people. It was Jackson Powers-Johnson throwing people and being aggressive as hell. And apparently, Jackson Powers-Johnson was so aggressive that Antonio Pierce was told, you need to tell this guy to relax a little bit. To me, the physicality that the Raiders brought to this Browns game was definitely noticeable on tape. And that's what the Raiders got to continue to do as they go forward. If the Raiders want to win games as we go forward, we got to be physical. We got to go out there and hit people and put it into the mindset of Bo Nix. Put it into the mindset of Patrick Mahomes, or maybe it's a defensive guy. Maybe it's a linebacker or a safety. But we got to put it into their mind that we're coming after you. We're going to hit you. We're going to hit you hard. That too, right? Adam Butler had a huge play against Deshaun Watson. It was on the first drive of the game. It led to a 15-yard penalty because it was such a hard hit. But that's setting the tone right there, right? You got to set the tone. You got to make those people on the other side fear you as a team. And if you get a 15-yard penalty, oh well. As long as it's not a dirty hit, right? As long as it's a clean hit, I'll take those 15 yards all day. Isaiah Pola-Mao hitting Amari Cooper. You think Amari Cooper wanted to run across the middle of the field again? I guarantee you he did not, right? Those type of things matter. And yesterday the Raiders showed up and they're just a physical football team. And I hope that's the team that we continue to get as we go forward. Hopefully Gardner Minshew is able to continue to improve his game. Hopefully Luke Getsy continues to run those end arounds. I think that was a big difference in this game for the Raiders. And hopefully Antonio Pierce continues to hold people accountable. If Jack Jones is the guy making business decisions, bench his ass for the first quarter. If Maxx Crosby doesn't want to play because he's faking an injury, bench his ass, right? And I'm not saying that that's what he's doing. We know he has a high ankle sprain, but I'm just making an example. If there's a guy that's checked out, Devontae Adams maybe, right? If there's a guy that's checked out, keep him on the sideline. We don't need that guy, right? Let the guys play that want to play, right? Let the guys that are hungry, the Isaiah Pola-Maos, Jackson Powers-Johnsons, let these guys get out there and do their thing, right? Let me know what you guys think, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Video takes so many hours to make, so let me know if you guys enjoy it. Drop a comment down below. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. DJ Glaze film breakdown coming tomorrow. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.